All right, everyone, and we are live. Hello out there. Welcome to our second episode of KC Reacts. I'm Kevin Hammer,
I'm Chris Barrett.
and we welcome you. Seriously, thank you for showing up. It's amazing. We hope you enjoyed our first episode. We're going to hope that you enjoy this one. Before we get to it, though, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit? How are you feeling about? Are you still in mourning when it comes to your Chiefs? We know how that went
No,
last night.
okay. Well, we were very excited, but Kansas City has also been very blessed. We had two Super Bowl wins in a row. Not every city gets that. So lots of attention has been paid to our city over the past few years, and it's great. I'm glad for Philadelphia. It's awesome. They obviously were the better team. The Chiefs didn't show up to play. In fact, I don't think they were in New Orleans, actually. I think those were body doubles. But because I think everyone in Kansas City was just caught off guard by how bad they were, and but it's kind of like I told you last night when I maybe had kind of a couple of too many drinks and stuff like that after watching the Super Bowl game. I mean, Kansas City still has a lot to look forward to. We really do. We've got the World Cup coming to our city next year. That's going to be huge attention for our great city. And so,
Awesome.
I mean, I really found today talking to other people, just kind of in passing, or other friends, no one seemed to actually be that upset about it. We were just kind of
Well,
like, okay, it didn't
I've
work
heard
out.
overall a lot of the response to it was just kind of in general. But one thing we're hoping to not have a response to is tonight's stream
That's
because
true.
we think this is going to be a good one. Chris, I guess I got to start the question off with you. Are you a genitalist?
Well, if you're if you're asking me if I prefer a person with a penis, that is true, and a real one, not a fake flesh rod. But but the thing is, ultimately, why this is like so silly to me is that sexual attraction, sexual orientation goes well beyond what genitals a person has. And we were even discussing it earlier today, when we were talking about just general attraction to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that there were certain groups of people that just looked too feminine for me. So certain guys that just looked too feminine, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd never be attracted to them. And guess what? They have dicks, but I'll
All
probably
right.
never be with them.
Well, with that, Chris, let's test your bigotry. We've got some clips here,
All
and
right.
we're gonna watch these clips, respond quickly, then we're gonna have an overall conversation to discuss how much we are bigots. So this ought to
Yeah.
be good. And if you're watching, please like, subscribe, share, and also feel free to comment. We'd love having your input during this conversation because are you transphobic? Are you a genitalist? Do you want to sleep with someone with a certain set of genitals? You might be a bigot if you do. All right. With that, our first clip here is a brief one. It doesn't have audio, so I'll read it to you, and it has to deal with being stood up on a date. A man who is trans, says a trans woman, is stood up on a date. Well, actually, no, the date leaves. So here's our
Right.
first quick clip. All right, y'all. So if you're just listening and you're not watching, that brief clip, here's what it says. It shows a picture of a trans individual, of course, purple hair, and it says he found out that I was trans and called an Uber to leave. Chris, what's your response to that? Was he a bigot? Was this man a bigot?
I mean, Usually for me, these people are actually easy to clock. So I mean, I do kind of have to wonder what this guy was thinking. I mean, in this video, this person does certainly look like a female, even though it's a male. But we also know that they tend to go out of their way to give themselves nice lighting, and maybe not in this case so much the lighting, but a nice angle and everything, so that they actually look more
Mm,
feminine or whatever the case may be. So I am always kind of amazed by that. But let's say I did get fooled, and a trans identifying female, actually went home with me, and I thought the person was attractive, which is probably not likely because half of them look like they're like 12-year-old boys. So that would call my attractions into question. So, but you know, I mean, let's say they were older, like say a buck angel or something like that. And I was fooled. As soon as I discovered that this person wasn't really a man, yeah, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna
yeah.
leave.
Which
And the reason I'm gonna leave is because it has nothing to do with like the fact that they have it. Well, I can't say it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that they have a vagina. It certainly does have something to do with that fact. But, but it's not just that. I mean, I have never met a trans man that truly gives off masculine energy to me. So it's
nah, I
more
hear
than
that.
yeah, it's more than a preference for what they have down in their crotch.
So, Chris,
It yeah.
sorry, just to jump in on that because then we'll move along to the next
Oh yeah,
video.
yeah. I'm
Would
sorry.
you
I'm
agree
going
with
on
this
too long.
that much though? Would you say though that one of the things that shows the default settings of a trans individual is when they get pissed? I mean, I'm just saying. I've seen a lot of trans women, so men who believe that they are women, when they got angry, that voice gets like this. And I'm like,
Right.
damn, relax, relax, child. And then I've seen many times where a quote unquote trans man, so a woman who thinks that she is a man, will get upset and start crying and express herself as a woman would, not as a man would. So in my mind, so for me, a lot of these individuals go to like a default setting when they're upset in one way or another.
Well, and also keep this in mind, Kevin, and we can definitely move on. We don't have to talk about it at length right now because otherwise I'll just go on and on. But the thing is, this is obviously a gay man, and because he's attracted to men, so that's what he is. And I think that we should probably, in the broader conversation, touch on how inappropriate that is in the first place for
Yeah.
gay men to be hitting on straight men, because that's essentially what happened here.
And we definitely, so we have also a great video, a great clip for the future where we'll have an in-depth conversation about is what's considered a homosexual and heterosexual when it comes to a relationship with a trans individual. And but we also touch on that a bit tonight in a clip coming up. But our next clip, and before I go to that, Vinny, as always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. I saw you commented on both Facebook and YouTube. You are our most committed fan. So thank you so much, Vinny. You're awesome. All right. And with that, we're going to go to our next clip. It's a little bit longer. We have this trans individual, this man, discussing why he doesn't, tell the men that he goes out on dates with right away that he's trans. All right. So here we go.
People are upset or angry that I don't tell men that I'm trans before the first date. Now, here's the thing. I am safe. I only ever meet men in a very, very public place, like a restaurant, a bar, or mini golf, or whatever. Second of all, my bestie always has their picture and my location. I also never sleep with men who aren't my boyfriend, let alone men who don't know that I'm trans. I would always tell someone that before I slept with them. I'd like to think that I'm actually doing this in a very respectful way to the guy, but also in a safe way for me. I think it's important that someone get to know me for me before they judge me based on my past. If more people actually knew that trans people were just normal people like everyone else, then this wouldn't even be an issue.
All right. Chris, I'm gonna throw it to you first. I mean, what's your initial response to this individual?
Well, okay. So I thought about this long and hard because, just for everyone's knowledge, I have already seen this video clip. So I really thought about this long and hard. And, I do appreciate the level of respect that the person says that they're giving. But ultimately, when it gets down to it, I mean, I really do think that he's just trying to cover his ass. And it does almost feel weird calling that person a he, because I will say, he passes well, for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
but the thing is, he's got the, really exaggerated female appearance, the gigantic boobs and all that type of stuff. And it's like they're always like such a caricature of women, almost like drag queens kind of are,
Mm-hmm.
and anyway, so I appreciate the person is saying that they're being respectful, but I think it is deeper than that. I think they kind of gave away what their real motivation was, which is keeping their butt covered.
Yeah.
So that they don't get the crap beat out of them, for misleading a straight guy. And I really do think that's it. So I really can't, I mean, I can't give this person any kudos because I think that's really what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, from my perspective, first I want to start off to this individual. I mean, you say you want to be known for who you are. Well, I hate to break it to you. When it comes to dating, being trans is a key part of who you are in that context. I am the first person to say that no, me being a homosexual man is not a core aspect of who I am as a person overall, right? There's so much more to me. But when it came to my dating life, when I was single, you best believe being a homosexual was obviously a key part of that, of my life, of that aspect of my life. So to this individual, to this young gentleman, no, that's the thing. They need to know who you are, especially if you're going on a date with a young man who wants to have children, biological children, with the woman that he marries. He has every right to know this about you. I'll give you a few props. All right, you don't have sex with someone without being in a relationship or before you tell them that you are trans. All right. And you say you're safe. I'm not sure what relevancy that was to the specific topic, but kudos for being safe, for letting a friend know where you are and who you're with. But I reiterate, being trans in the context of dating is a key part of who you are. Therefore, you can't separate it. In your job, all right, that doesn't have to be a key part, as it shouldn't be, right? Your daily friendships doesn't need to be a part of that. But when you're dating, it absolutely is relevant, just as when I was single, me being a homosexual man was incredibly relevant to my dating life.
Well,
That's my initial reaction to this.
yeah, and just one more brief thing. I think that he also kind of gives something else away, which is ultimately what I think we're talking about here is that this is still a trans person that expects that straight men should be okay with him.
Yeah.
Again, I'll make two quick points. Here's another gay man who is dressing up as a woman in order to, seduce straight men. So I don't like that. Secondly, he's saying that someone shouldn't judge him on what his past is. And what he means by that very clearly, and this really stood out to me, is you shouldn't judge me on the fact that I'm actually a man. That's ridiculous.
And being trans isn't part of his past, it's part of his present and his future. I mean, looking like a man might be part of his past, but being trans, being a man, is part of your present and your future and your always. So that whole "don't judge me for my past," it's not really the past now, is it?
No, not really, because you're still a man, dude. Yeah, that's what you are. You may look like a convincing woman to, the average person, but
Yeah.
you're still a dude.
I mean, it's not like you once, when you were younger, had a klepto, past to where you stole or something, and now you're reformed. No, you're still a dude. You will never be able to give that man a biological child It's part of your present. But with that, we got our final stream, our final clip, people. Some of you might recognize this individual. I recently introduced this individual to Chris. We've got an OG social justice warrior here in this next clip. Now, yeah, we're going back to when we used the terminology social justice warrior for the left. And this individual was major when it came to pushing trans ideology, the idea that if you do not want to sleep with someone who is trans or date them, you are a bigot, and pushed so much other insanity on the left. And this individual is Riley Dennis. All right, like I said, if you recognize this person, please comment. If you remember this individual, Riley Dennis, this individual who's a man who identified as a trans woman. In this clip, well, I'm just going to play the clip because Chris and y'all that are watching, I would love to get your initial reactions to this. Here we go. Here's Riley Dennis.
In the queer community, gay men often pride themselves on being disgusted by vaginas, and the same goes for lesbian women with penises. It's difficult because some queer people have built their sexual identities on these repulsions, but I don't think they're innate at all. If you met someone who was extremely attractive, had a great personality, but didn't have the genitals that you wanted, you might be surprised to find that it isn't a deal breaker.
All right, now that's just a brief clip. Chris, your initial response to Riley Dennis here.
Okay, so this is an idiot that clearly doesn't know the difference between homosexuality and bisexuality, okay? You know, I mean, really, they clearly don't. And, you know, I don't pride myself on being repulsed by vagina. I'll tell you what, like I always like to say to people, and you've heard this, I'm a platinum gay, literal platinum gay. I have never had any sort of contact with a vagina in my life, not even through birth. I was born C-section, guys.
Same.
Yeah,
right here, C-section.
so
No.
hasn't even happened to me. And so, but I'll tell you what, I'm actually not repulsed by vaginas. I mean, you could sit here and talk about vaginas all day. You can call them pussies or whatever, and you know, explain all the anatomy to me, and I won't care. You know who I have noticed that are maybe gay men that you know, find a little bit of repulsion are the gay guys who actually did come into contact with that. And I'm not going to out the person that we both know, but he he gets very upset about hearing vaginas. Well, it's probably because he actually came into contact with one. But you know, I mean, you know, so but that's a small percentage of gay men. A lot of us have just never really had any sort of contact and really don't give a rip. So this person clearly doesn't even know gay people very well.
So I guess where I always start off from is, I mean, Riley Dennis, come on now. What's interesting is that in other footage, which we will cover in the future, Riley Dennis goes on about how he is against conversion therapy and how much it is an evil. However, he very much promotes conversion therapy in the idea that if you just get by your bias, you can change your attractions, right? If I just get over my homosexual bias that I prefer, you know, that I am attracted to the male genitalia, that I am attracted to a penis. If I just get over that, then I could be with a woman. I could be with a vagina, right? And furthermore, what's even all the more entertaining is that these are the types of individuals that in the past would say this to me. They'd say, Kevin, that's transphobic. That's a genitalist. That means you're valuing someone based on their genitals. Say that the man you're with, heaven forbid, were to lose his genitals in some kind of accident. Are you saying you just were valuing him for his genitals and you'd break up with him? And my response to that was always, even if, heaven forbid, I was with a man who lost his genitals in some kind of accident, he still wouldn't have a vagina. I am a homosexual man. And so that's all the insanity here is that this individual specifically, and many others like him, many others like Riley Dennis, actually promote conversion therapy in the belief that if you're not attracted to someone who presents as male, and they have a vagina, or someone who presents as female and they have a penis, if you're not attracted to them, all you got to do is work on it and you'll get over your bias. It is absolute insanity. It is supporting conversion therapy, and we need to challenge it every time we encounter it.
Well, and I mean, and let's call it for what it is. It's really homophobia. And let me ask you, Kevin. I'm just going to go out on a limb on here and guess, but Riley is actually a straight man. It's probably my guess.
So this is Riley identifies as a trans woman who's a lesbian. So he is dating a
straight
woman.
Man.
He is dating a woman, yes.
So I mean, it's pretty clear why this idiot is saying these things, because he's a straight dude. That's what he is. He's a straight dude. He doesn't understand homosexuality. Of course, he doesn't understand the difference between homosexuality and bisexuality, because he's straight. He doesn't have the same type of feelings that we do. Oh my God, this stuff makes me so angry.
Well, Chris, as I said, people in the future, you gotta tune in when we cover Riley Dennis in a greater context, because this individual also believes that Saudi Arabia, that it's a very trans friendly environment and very LGBT friendly, because they will find a homosexual man and either threaten him with going to jail, with death, or he can, get mutilated to look like a woman, then he's allowed to live in society. That's not an accepting society. Also, once again, that's Riley Dennis supporting conversion therapy. These people are insane. The three individuals we covered this evening are varying degrees of this idea that the world owes them attraction, right? That regardless, you owe your attraction to them, right? No matter what your attraction mainly is, you owe it to them to change who you are for them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what they're doing. Um, it does really sicken me to see the two gay men that we first saw, going after straight men. Um, because I never really approved of gay men who had that fantasy about, like, oh, I can convert a straight guy or whatever. That's stupid, because we can't be converted, so why do you think that they can be? It's disgusting to think something like that. And anyway, but then on top of that, it gets like even a little bit worse when we have a straight man like what we just saw saying this stuff, especially because then I know that he's going after lesbians. So what he's really doing is attacking and sexually assaulting women. And I have no tolerance for that whatsoever.
And it really is just wild, because that's what they justify. Riley Dennis, I looked Riley Dennis up, and he hasn't been active on social media in a number of years. Last time I think was like 3 years ago, and even then only really commenting on movies and stuff like that. But the last strong activity focused on activism, I think was about 5 or 6 years ago.
Is he still alive?
He's still alive. He's living with his female lover, so his lesbian lover, as he put it. Exactly. So with that, I do want to go to the comments quick, because Vinny, you actually made a comment here that is often a point of discussion, right? Because a lot of people would assume this, and I think we need to touch on this tonight. So Vinny commented, I'm bisexual, but I still don't want to be catfished about a person's genitals. Now, this actually is an interesting conversation, because there is this assumption, right, that then a trans man or a trans woman, so, someone who looks one way above and the other below the waist, right? Well, then they'd be perfect for someone who's bisexual. And
no, not necessarily.
I have yet to find that be the case of anyone that I've talked to who has told me that they're bisexual, that they want, someone who presents female but happens to have a penis, that but has a penis, or someone who presents male and has a vagina. They don't want that either.
Right. And, I want to make it clear, Vinny, I'm not disparaging bisexuals in any sort of way here. It's just that these people seem to be confused about the difference between heterosexuality, homosexuality, and bisexuality. I mean, of course, we have come up with this new term for people who are okay with trans, which is pansexual. But I think that's kind of a bullshit term. Excuse my language. Um, but I really do think it is. Um, because all it is just glorified bisexuality. And so, yeah, obviously, there's some bisexuals out there who don't mind if someone is trans. But then there's people like you, Vinny, who absolutely do care what you're getting yourself into, and that's perfectly legitimate too. I mean, if I were bisexual, I would imagine, I mean, I'm not, so it's kind of hard to imagine, but I'll try to imagine as best as I can. I would imagine that I'd still want to know what to expect, and so that is perfectly valid, Vinny. It totally is.
Yeah. And Vinny commented, I want to be a guest on a future episode. We are going to get there with KC Reacts. Trust me, Vinny. We are going to get there. We are looking to have guests on in the future. So we won't forget about you, Vinny. But yeah, it's interesting because there's so much more discussion to have here in the future, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say ladies and gentlemen. We will be covering specifically those who talk about how, for example, it being a homosexual relationship, if a man is with another man who identifies as trans, right? Because it's an interesting conversation to have, because those of us who are truly homosexual men, we aren't drawn to them, right? We are not drawn to quote unquote trans women. Us being intimate with them would be a homosexual act. Physically, it would be a homosexual act, but
Sure.
visually, that we don't see anything that we are attracted to. And later, Chris and I are going to have a greater conversation in regards to that, because I do think it's one where there's a lot of confusion and a lot of accusations thrown around when it comes to that. Like I said, when I was asked, when I was accused of being transphobic and asked what I'd do if I was with a man who lost his genitals, and I then I was accused that I'd be, a genitalist, or, I'd abandon him if he lost his penis. Again, he would not, even if he lost his penis, have a vagina. So that is an absolute insane argument, but it's also one that we see. And it goes into all these other conversations about people hiding things when they go on dates, right? I mean, not too long ago, we were having discussions, and we still are, about HIV positive individuals. Do they have an obligation when they're on a date with someone to say, hey, I'm HIV positive, or I have AIDS? I personally say that they absolutely do. And I actually think that it should be a
Agree with you
crime.
100%, Kevin, by the
Yeah,
way.
I think
I
it should
agree
be a
with you 100%.
crime for someone to lie about their HIV/AIDS status and have sex with someone, or to omit it, right? They'd be like, oh, I omitted it. No, yeah, treatment aside, right? Extension of life aside, this day and age, when it comes to being HIV positive, having AIDS, it is still someone has the right to decide whether they want to take that risk
Mhm.
when it comes to their health. Just as someone has the right to decide if they want to be with someone who's not a biological male or a biological woman based on what they want for their future.
Right.
And as we discussed with that earlier one who was talking about how, he doesn't tell men that he's trans because he wants them to get to know him. And it's like, dude, these are probably men who are hoping to marry a woman and have actual biological children with this woman.
Right. Right. And I mean, I I agree with you. I mean, definitely, whether you have HIV or gonorrhea or whatever, I mean, you should be sharing that with someone to let them know, hey, before you have sex with me, we need to take some precautions here, folks. And I mean, there was, a guy I was very attracted to, wonderful person, really cared about him and everything. And he was HIV positive. But the thing is we made sure to take all the necessary precautions that we could possibly take because, but, because obviously I don't want it. But, but he was respectful enough to let me know, seriously, like within seconds of me getting to know him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what these people are talking about, you know. And I mean, when I was hit with that, it did give me pause. I was kind of like, do I really want to go down this route? I mean, it was a perfectly nice situation. It's not like it was some one night stand or anything like that. We intended to date each other, and we did for quite some time. But the thing is, he made sure that I knew exactly what I was dealing with. You know, and to me, that's just the respectful thing to do. And I made the decision that I'd take all the precautions that I could, and that sort of thing, and everything worked out fine. I'm HIV free. I don't have it. But it's because this person was responsible and told me about what was going on. And within, like I said, literally within seconds. So I mean, but these, and I don't know, just back up a second. The guy was totally understanding if I didn't want to be with him. And he
Mm-hmm.
didn't think that there was any problem with that whatsoever. He understood. He totally got it. And he made sure to go out of his way to tell me, hey, if you don't want to do this, if you don't want to continue dating, I totally understand it. And, but these people, they just expect it. And,
Yep.
I mean, what kind of insanity is that?
I mean,
I mean,
these are also the types of individuals who go on and on about privilege, right? About who has privilege in a society. Imagine what kind of privilege you must have in a society where you just assume that someone owes you their attractions. That is privilege. That is such a privilege where you feel you don't have to reveal a key aspect of who you are in the context of dating and relationships, and marriage and all that stuff, and having a family, that you don't have to, reveal a key aspect of who you are when it comes to dating. And if they do reject you, then you get to be offended and label them a bigot and privileged. That is privilege. That is privilege in a culture to where you get to play the victim card in all these scenarios, right? Like
right.
that, to me, that is one of the embodiments of privilege, is to where you get to do that, right? And then play the victim after.
Well, for the past few years, I mean, quite honestly, I mean, transgender people have not been victims at all. I mean, they like to play that they're victims because they like to continue that victimhood mentality. But, I mean, people, Hollywood, the government, especially under Biden, you know, uh, employers have gone out of their way to accommodate these people. And it still seems like nothing is ever good enough for them. And I'm glad to
Mhm.
actually see them losing some of their privilege under the Trump presidency. I'm glad to help take away even more of their privilege on even my own personal level. I mean, just for those of you who don't know, I get out there and go before legislatures and stuff like that to help take away their privilege because they don't deserve it, and
Especially their quote unquote privilege of being able to target children and parents, right? That's
right. That's the thing. That's the key thing because they're especially going after children. I mean, this whole idea of trans kids is ridiculous. And and I don't hold it all against just even the transgender people. There's so many straight people and gay people and everybody who are like supporting this stuff. And I'm just like, what
oh,
is
yeah.
wrong with you?
Oh yeah, I think when it comes to a lot of parents, I put parents of trans kids, right, in quote unquote, in two different categories. And sometimes I think they can move from one category to the other. They might start in one and end up in the other, but generally it's two categories. In my experience, the parents of kids with gender dysphoria, which I honestly think many times they don't have gender dysphoria. It's just we've done such a great job of confusing things that kids are just getting confused, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is I put it into these two categories: are parents who their children might genuinely have gender dysphoria or just in general confused about their gender, about their sex and what it means to be a boy or what it means to be a girl, and they personally don't want their child to transition, but they get these activists who say to them, well, would you rather have a trans kid or a dead kid, right? That's what they say, and that speaks to a primal part of being a parent. If you think that your actions might result in your child's life being forfeited, that the child might give up on life, that's going to terrify you. So I think some parents fall into that, and then they get bullied. They get bullied by that, and now we have, in many states, we have the state governments backing up the bullies, saying, well, if you don't transition your child, well, you're a bigot, you're a bad parent. And living in New York State, which I do, unfortunately, I have seen this with some good friends of mine, actually. I actually know one man, specifically, he lost his son because of this battle. Now, the other category of parents are the parents that they will never get the chance to have a bumper sticker that reads "My child's on the honor roll," right? Because that doesn't cut it anymore. So they want, especially the moms, right? They want to be able to go to their brunches and talk about how special their child is. Well, what's in fashion right now? Having a trans child. So if you can say, oh, I have a trans child, I love and accept my child, first of all, you get to be a savior. And you get to show how open-minded you are. You're so open-minded, your brain is falling out, but hey, you're open-minded. And that's what you get to say. You get the social points, right? You get that status by saying that you have a trans child. And so this is the other type of parent. These are the parents that use these poor children, use the confusion that these children are experiencing, and much of the time it's confusion they put on the child, by the way, because you will have parents of these children who will say, oh, I knew my child was trans, or my child told me they were trans before they could even talk. And we're going to cover those videos in the future because, yes, folks, Google it. You can look that up. Look up the stories of parents of trans kids and listen to how they describe that they knew their child was trans. First of all, how's your child gonna tell you anything about their identity before they can walk or talk? I mean, that is absolute insanity. And furthermore, when it comes to these parents, I guarantee you that 99% of their stories, if you listen to them, they'll say something like, well, little Tommy wanted to play with Barbie dolls, didn't want to act like the boys. Little Sally didn't like dresses, so little Sally is now Sam, and little Tommy is now Tara, right? Because these children did not have normal expressions of interest that were, gender stereotypes, which part of the irony with that is the same people who use gender stereotypes to justify transitioning their children are often the same people who will, in any other circumstance, go on and on about how gender stereotypes are wrong. They would just go on and on about it. It's absolute insanity, folks.
Oh yeah, it is. And I had made a post regarding that, and let me see if I can find it real quick. I'm not going to try to take too much time on this. It was hilarious. It made me laugh. Oh my god. Okay, I don't want to take a bunch of time on it. But anyway, essentially, what it said is, um, uh, we knew that our child was trans 3 weeks before he was conceived. Um, it's satire. It's satire, but it was beautiful satire. We knew our child was trans 3 weeks before he was conceived. We learned because the doctor tapped out Morse code on my wife's testicles.
All right, but seriously though, I have to find the clip, and we will respond to it, Chris. There is a clip of a woman saying that she felt it when her child was in the womb. I think she used the term of, "I feel like I have a feminine spirit in my womb."
Oh, good
And
God.
which also the irony to that is that woman is probably also pro-abortion. So she wouldn't mind.
Probably.
She wouldn't mind if she didn't want the child killing it, but since she wanted the child, she was so connected to the child that she could feel its feminine spirit. So, but when it was born a boy, she was like, "Well, it actually has a feminine spirit." It's absolute insanity. And speaking though of this concept of with the terminology, right? This right here, the craziness that we're discussing when it comes to the trans ideology and this idea that you are a bigot if you do not want to date someone who is trans, is part of the reason why I personally prefer the term homosexual, specifically homosexual man. And here's why. It's scientific, it's direct, and I've seen this perversion, this twisting of the term gay. I've seen gay described, especially by quote unquote trans men, so women pretending to be men. I've seen gay described as the attraction to the masculine, or attraction to masculine energy. Get the out of here.
Well, but the
I'm a homosexual.
Kevin,
I'm a homosexual.
but the funny thing is, Kevin, you know, I don't think that I've ever met a trans man that has masculine energy, because I have met them, like an actual man has. And here's the thing, guys. You can take the most effeminate, limp-wristed queen, gay guy,
Mhm.
and he has more masculinity in his little tiny freaking pinky than a trans man has.
Even if it is a manicured and polished pinky.
Yes, it might be. It might be manicured and polished, but I'll tell you what, he has more masculinity. And the reason is because he is a true man. He just happens to be an effeminate man.
Mhm.
I've met effeminate straight guys. I mean, I really have.
Mhm.
And
Oh, absolutely.
it happens. I mean, some men are just kind of effeminate, but it doesn't mean that they still aren't men. You know, and I mean, I've dated some fairly effeminate guys. It's not my preference, but they were sweet and nice and everything, and of course I gave them a chance. And that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean that just because they're an effeminate gay man that I'm going to be suddenly open to trans men who technically aren't usually effeminate. They are, but the problem is they're kind of fake masculine. Like you can
Mhm.
tell. We all know about the pissed off lawyer, on X.
Oh,
She goes
yeah.
out. Yeah, she goes out of her way to try to look masculine. It's like I don't think I've seen a picture of her with a smile on her face, because she thinks evidently that masculinity means you need to look like this all the time.
Yeah. And there's also this idea of someone's a bigot or hateful if they meet you in person, find out your lie, find out that you concealed something, and rejected you. So let me give you a kind of example of what I'm talking. Imagine if I put a picture of myself. If I was single and I put a picture of myself out there back when I had hair on this head, right? That was my dating profile, was when I had hair on my head, right? And this person agreed to, meet up with me and go on a date and all that stuff. And, I decided to put a wig on that looked like the hair on my head, right? So we go out on a date and get to a point where either on the date they discover that that's just a wig, or later on I take that hair off and they decide, okay, I'm gonna leave you. They have every right, because I may not have necessarily lied, because I once had hair on my head, legitimate hair on my head like that, but I misled them. They'd have every right to say, hey, I don't want to be here. You mispresented yourself. You misrepresented yourself. I'm outie. They have every right to say that. So it's to me, it's a similar thing. Is why be deceitful? At the beginning, Why not just be full honest? Now, Vinny, I want to go to the comments quick, which once again, people, please do comment. Not just like and share, but comment. We love to engage. Vinny is telling us that for the KC Reacts podcast, you might want to start a new YouTube channel account in case you want to leave your personal videos separate. You're going to start getting a lot of subscribers. Well, Vinny, from your lips to God's ears when it comes to the subscribers. But Chris and I have discussed this, and it is something we are planning to do in the future. We just wanted to see how the vibes were, how you connected with us in what we do here before we create that separate channel. I mean, it's more convenient because, I already had the YouTube channel and already have some subscribers. So we just want to see what we can build from here. But Vinny, that is actually one of our plans. So
Yeah, and I have an aversion to Google, and so I don't do anything Google. I have no Google accounts whatsoever. And anyway, but I will make sure that when Kevin and I share a Google account to do this podcast, I guess I'll give up some information to Google. Jeez.
hey, now Google is acknowledging the Gulf of America, so it's becoming
They
patriotic.
are. Oh my God, that actually brings up a good question. Just give me just a second. I am kind of curious what Apple Maps is doing. Just curious.
That is a curious, but yeah, Vinny.
Yeah.
To recap that, yeah, we are planning for that to be an option. We do have a Facebook. We created a Facebook page. Unfortunately, live streaming to Facebook pages. Apparently, there's now an issue with that. It used to be very easy if you created a page, not a profile, but a page. But for some reason, we've run into some problems there. But back to the topic at hand. Yeah, please comment. Let us know. Have you had this experience? Have you had this experience where someone who is trans has hit on you? You maybe even ended up on a date with them? And don't worry, I'm not going to pick on you if you saw a picture and were fooled. All right, we live in an era where people can do amazing things with, obviously with surgery. Don't get me wrong, but also they can do amazing things with Photoshop, right? So,
yes,
so
absolutely.
we're not going to make fun of you if you have a story where you walked into a restaurant, right, as a man, and there was this individual who looked feminine, who looked sort of like a woman, but you realize quickly, oh yeah, I don't think this is a woman, and you got yourself out of there. We're not going to judge you, but we would love to hear your story, because we are just all out. Part of why we are doing what we do is addressing this insanity that is still being pushed, even though we are going in the right direction as a culture, thankfully, when it comes to things like trans ideology and DEI.
2 points, Kevin. First one, just to follow up on what we were talking about earlier. As much as I love Apple, they have still not changed it to the Gulf of America, so I am disappointed and may write to them.
Traitors.
I know. But secondly, yeah, it's interesting to broaden this conversation out there. I mean, I wouldn't even mind having some trans people, comment and stuff like that, and get their feeling. I mean,
Right.
I mean, I am against transgenderism as a whole. We've had that conversation, and
We'll
so
have it for our audience in the future, though.
right, exactly. So I mean, I am against it for kids, adults, whatever. But the thing is, and I know that that's kind of probably an extreme view for some people, and I will further explain it because it's probably not as extreme as it sounds. But the thing is, I'm just finding so much, I don't know, weird sorts of, deception and like the men joining up in women's sports, or the men going into women's restrooms, or the men going into women's locker rooms, or claiming that kids can be trans. It's like it's so deceptive. I mean, I know that people complained and cried and moaned about homosexuality and the so-called gay agenda and all that type of stuff, and maybe there was kind of a gay agenda among the really left-leaning homosexuals. But and by the way, Kevin, I'm with you. I mean, I generally prefer homosexual. I'll flip back and forth sometimes,
Yeah. If
but
someone asks me if I'm gay, I'll say yeah. But at the
right,
end of the day, I'm gonna introduce myself as a homosexual. That's just a
right,
fact.
because it says, well, first of all, it has the word sex in it, and it's not, and we're not talking about sex. We're talking about, we're talking about, you know, uh male, female, that sort of thing. And I also like homosexual because it's also inclusive of homosexual women as well.
Mm,
Whereas for whatever reason, gay became associated with men and lesbian became associated with the women. So homosexual explains it for everybody. But anyway, that said, homosexuals never wanted to really truly change society in the sense that we didn't want to force other people to change something about their lives. And even the ones who may have kind of wanted that. I mean, let's look at it, guys. Same sex marriage, our protection in the workplace, um, the general acceptance by society in the sense that, most of us don't get hit over the head anymore, or whatever the case may be, just because we're walking down the street, maybe holding our partner's hand or whatever. That didn't that doesn't affect anyone else in any sort of way. The fact that I'm married to a man and that Kevin is married to a man doesn't affect your straight relationship whatsoever. The fact that I have protections in the workplace doesn't affect you in the workplace whatsoever, because no one's giving me any sort of preference. All the laws are out there are just saying that you can't fire me just simply because you find out that I'm gay, and which to me seems perfectly fair. But trans stuff, that's where I start having the problem, and it goes back to our larger point here. They're expecting people to change everything to suit them. And just the same about
mm-hmm.
this genitalist thing, again, they're expecting gay men, gay women, straight people, whatever, to conform to their ideas. And,
Yeah,
just to even,
absolutely.
and like, that we're supposed to change our sexual
Yeah.
attractions for
And
this. And even
and
for the bisexuals, it's like it's not fair to them to sneak some crap up on them that they're not expecting.
and I will say, because Chris and I both agree on this, and it's going to be a topic of discussion in the future, is why we think Pride Month, Pride celebrations, all that crap needs to die. It needs to be gone. It's no longer relevant to our society. It needs to just be booted. Now, I do want to quickly go to the comments because we have had some people commenting, so I want to acknowledge that quick. We are almost at an hour, so we'll wrap up soon. Again, thank you all who are watching. Please like, share, and also comment. So Stacy, all right, Stacy, a first-time commenter. Welcome, Stacy. So 2 comments here. Since there's a rumor of the removal of no-fault divorce, I pray they allow spouse came out as a reason for divorce. Well, okay, all right. So, by the way, Stacy, so even from a religious perspective, right? So we have obviously government sanctioned marriage, state sanctioned marriage, right? And then there's religious marriage, which I've always been fine with that distinction. I actually agree with that distinction. So I mean, both have always allowed for deception to annul a marriage. Both in the legal aspect and also in the church. I know I think it is annulment, if that is the correct term, or resolving or dissolving or something like that. There's a
It's
terminology.
annulment.
Annulment, yeah. Where
Mhm.
if one of the spouses enter a marriage and they're being deceptive, so say for example they lie and say that they lie or hide that they're infertile, right? And they say a man lies about being infertile, and he enters into a marriage. They get married in the church, right? He and his wife do, and it comes to find out that he lied about his ability to have children, that the church would annul that marriage because there was deception there. So in both, I think if no fault divorce was removed, which I do have issue with no fault divorce, by the way, we can discuss that in the future as well. I think both in the state recognized marriages and in church recognized marriages, I think your spouse coming out of the closet in some fashion would definitely be covered as to a legitimate reason as to why that marriage should end.
Oh
Chris, do you
yeah,
have
for
anything to add
sure.
to that?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean that is that's a given. I mean, if I suddenly found out that my husband was more attracted to women or something like that, trust me, I'm probably not going to want to be with him anymore. You know, but the funny thing is we actually do have something coming up in the state of Missouri, Kevin, that deals with exactly what Stacy is talking about. Now, we're not going to get rid of no fault divorce. Um, this is something that religious conservatives are doing, and it's something that I actually oppose for various reasons, but it's also hilarious to me what they're going to do to themselves. So they're going to come up with something called covenant marriages
Hmm.
that only heterosexuals can enter into. One of the basic reasons that I disagree with this has nothing to do with the fact that they're excluding gay people from this, because why the hell do we want what
Yeah.
I'm going to describe? But the thing is they it's just kind of kind of a silly thing, because essentially what it boils down to is you can't get a divorce for pretty much any reason. And but the other thing is too, I'm tired of the government trying to define marriage. And you and I have talked about this before. I am actually more of a proponent of the idea of civil unions for everyone,
Mm,
period. Everyone. Not, it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. And leave the term marriage and whether you get a covenant marriage or whatever the case may be up to your church,
yeah.
that sort of thing. Those are the things that I actually support. But since that's probably not going to happen in our lifetimes, at least I really don't think it's going to. You know, if straight people want to enter into these new covenant marriages where they basically can't get a divorce for any sort of reason, more power to you. You guys have fun with that.
One sec.
But
Bye
cute Kevin.
bye. That's
But
Deja. She's
but
whining to me right now.
I mean, at the same time, it's stupid that the government, okay, basically what we heard was when gay people wanted to get married under the law, what we heard was, oh, you're redefining marriage. And here we're seeing religious conservatives in the state of Missouri redefining marriage again.
Well, I mean,
And
to jump in a little bit there, I always worded it this way, that I was about legal protections. Whether that came, I was fine with it. If all the legal protections were there, I was fine with, heck, domestic partnerships or whatever state marriage or whatever they wanted to use the term, right? My main focus was always that, for example, if the man I loved was in the hospital, right? That us entering into a legal union meant that I automatically had rights to say what would happen to him and that his
yeah,
family couldn't fight me on it. And some people would say, well, you can do that documentation without marriage. That is true. However, history has shown us that there were many cases, and we'll have this stream as well someday, where two men, for example, who were committed to each other, did all the legal protections, right? However, when one was in the hospital, incapacitated, the family of that man sued. and managed to
Hmm.
managed to boot his love aside. That scared me so deeply to my core that I was focused on legal protections. Not even marriage, it was legal protections. But with that, I do
Yes,
want to get back to the
I'm the same
comments,
with
but
you.
yeah, I do want to get back to
I'm with you,
because we
buddy.
do have it's jumping on the comments, so I thank y'all for doing that. Stacy actually commented that the reason why she commented that is because her ex did come out as trans. Which
Oh,
right, we will go into that someday, Stacy. And heck, if you wanted to be a guest, we'd love to have you on to discuss that.
that would be amazing.
Amberly responded, commented with, I'm against transgenderism as an ideology. It feels like a cult still. However, I do think that some people are more masculine or feminine congenitally, but rarely. So what we're talking about there are individuals that their genitalia can be, a mixture or not represent their actual biological sex. And keep in mind, we are talking rare. That's not even transgenderism. That's what we call intersex. And I know I have met people, and that's a topic for another stream because we are at an hour. I have met people who do fall under that intersex, right? So they have a deformity. And they are actually very upset that they've been dragged into this, that they are now under the LGBTQIA plus spirit animal 3, whatever, umbrella, because they happen to have been born with a condition, with a mutation, right? And that got them automatically included with this. And what's really dishonest and deceptive about that is the trans cult has used intersex people to push their cult views, their perspective, their agenda, right? That's
Two quick
absolute
points.
insane.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gavin. 2 quick points. One, intersex is divided up between male and female conditions still. So if someone's intersex, they are still either male or female. That is settled science. Period. Secondly, while I was with Jamie Reed, some of you may know who she is. When I was with Jamie Reed testifying at the Missouri House, guess what? They fell back on the intersex thing again. That has nothing to do with transgenderism. So I
Mm-hmm.
am so sorry for intersex people out there. Intersex, by the way, is an old term because they aren't intersex. It is divided up between male or female. They just have a deformity. That's what it is. Plain and simple.
Yep. And to build on that, they're including more and more under it. They're not even like legitimate intersex. I've actually heard discussions where if someone what they include under intersex isn't even scientific. They're just trying to reach and grab to bring as many in under the umbrella into the cult as possible. Say a man just happens to be born with a micro appendage down there, right? Some actually think of that as intersex. When that's not even having a small genitalia as a man isn't intersex, but they want to include that under the umbrella because as I've done a video before where I referred to the LGBT fucking, crazy. Sorry, I do apologize. I do try not to swear too much. The insanity as the Borg, right? They are the Borg. The resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. That is their ideology in a nutshell.
And
I quickly do want to go.
I do think the correct term, by the way, it's not intersex, guys. It's DSD. So developmental sexual disorders. That's what it is.
Yeah. And in the future, when we go more in depth into that, because that's worthy of a stream itself, we will use more of the scientific actual terminology, which terminology, once again, is also a discussion in and of itself, especially this day and age, where it's more about how you feel a word should be defined than what the word actually means, which is also absolute insanity. All right, on that note, we are at an hour. Right. So, what do you say, Chris, that we wrap this one up
Okay.
and then look to go into the future?
All right. Now it sounds good. I hope that we'll get more people following us and entering into the conversation. I think that the more people who are aware of the type of things that we're talking about, the more people who are giving us feedback to, also help us kind of refine our standpoints, because I mean, I do try to remain an open-minded person, and listen to other people and what they have to say. I think that'll be great for us all. So, guys, if you can share this to people, that would be great. Let them know. And we'll come out with a recorded version of this, right, Kevin, so that people can
Yeah.
give to others.
So our plan, by the way, in the future is we're going to even start editing from the streams themselves, shorter clips for you to share. So that's actually another thing. If you go to these streams, I update them after they air, the day after, and you'll see that I've put timestamps. If you also ever want to see us just create a shorter clip, we really want to communicate with you. If you have ideas for streams, if you're like, hey, this part of this stream would be an amazing clip, you should do it from this timestamp to this timestamp, let us know. Don't feel afraid. Chris and I are all about engaging. We are not here just to talk at you. We want to have a conversation with you. And as Vinny
Absolutely.
asked, he asked me on as a guest. That is something we'd love to have in the future. So with that, we are going to wrap up. There are more comments. I do apologize that we have not, if we didn't get to them today. I also apologize because unfortunately I'm getting a message that's saying that some comments cannot be posted at this time because of the destination that they're coming from. I am looking to resolve that situation in the future. But again, please don't give up. And also, when you comment, let us know if we can show the comment on screen, because we can make that visible for everyone to see. But we want to make sure that you're cool with that. So with that, Chris, would you say that we're ready to wrap this up?
I think so.
All right. So everyone, please like, share, and definitely subscribe. Every Monday, we're looking to do this 8:30 p.m. Central Time, and that will be 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. With that, God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you next time. Peace out.